The costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way,
At 78, Benny Andersson finally shares the real story behind ABBA. And it's more than music and fame. It's about the pain, the escape, and the personal struggles that shaped their iconic sound. Benny reveals the hidden truths we've long sensed but never truly heard before. The man known as the architect of ABBA's sound opens up about the deeper emotions and experiences that fueled one of the world's most legendary bands. Before ABBA became a global pop machine, Benny was just a boy fascinated by melodies, not fame. Raised on classical and folk music, he absorbed structure and emotion before ever touching a synthesizer. While the world would later dance to Dancing Queen, Benny was molded by Swedish accordion and church harmonies. These early roots gave him a deep musical compass. Even as ABBA chased disco lights, his sound came from a deeper, timeless place, not trends, but feeling. His partnership with Bjorn Ulvaeus created a rare balance. Benny sculpted chords and tension. Bjorn crafted lyrics and stories. Their songs seemed simple on the surface, but each beat held emotional weight. Benny didn't just write music. He sculpted it, tirelessly tweaking harmonies and chasing not perfection, but honesty. In the studio, he could spend hours adjusting a single note, replaying sections to match the emotion in his mind. While Agnetha and Frida shined in the spotlight, Benny worked in the shadows, arranging every echo and string, often feeling unseen, not as a star, but as a craftsman. Fans screamed for the singers, but few noticed the man carrying the pressure to make everything work. Benny wasn't the face of ABBA, but he was always its heart. He became the fixer when creative tensions rose, managing not only music but emotions, shouldering the silent burden of holding the band together. His chord progressions brought sadness into joyful melodies, creating that strange contrast in ABBA's sound, the hidden ache beneath the shine. He also embraced early tech in the studio, layering instruments and effects to create rich, cinematic soundscapes, building the groundwork for modern pop production. Benny turned silence into sound, knowing when to hold back, when to let a melody breathe, building trust with a listener instead of showing off. This control made ABBA's music feel more human, and it's why it still resonates today. In a recent interview, Benny revealed he used music to process feelings he couldn't express in real life. While others in the group faced emotions head-on, he let the piano speak for him. Many of ABBA's most heartbreaking songs weren't written to express regret. They were a way to avoid confrontation. He wasn't hiding, but he wasn't fully present either. Behind ABBA's perfect image was a man struggling with connection. He wasn't distant because he didn't care. He was distant because music gave him a safer place to feel. Every track was both creation and escape. Looking back now, Benny sees he wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing the feeling of a perfect note, a clean resolution. While ABBA became a global phenomenon, he often felt like a stranger inside it. The applause didn't fill the emotional gap, but the music still does. ABBA's success wasn't just about harmony. It was born from rivalry, ego, and unspoken frustration. Benny and Frida's relationship didn't begin with passion. It started in music. Late nights in the studio blurred lines between collaboration and connection. Their bond formed through melodies, not romance. Frida brought raw energy. Benny was internal and quiet, more at home behind a piano than in emotional conversation. Their differences enhanced their music but strained their relationship. Frida lived her feelings out loud. Benny processed in silence. Their shared trauma, her abandonment, his emotional bottling, meant songs became their therapy room. But instead of healing, they built distance. Benny has admitted he was more emotionally available in the studio than in real life. He poured his heart into songs, then shut down when the music stopped. Frida needed someone present beyond the booth. Benny couldn't be that. He says now that music was his shield, not his solution. Songs like The Winner Takes It All and One of Us weren't just ballads. They were messages he couldn't deliver face to face. Writing about pain was easier than owning it. While Frida lived every lyric, Benny stayed behind the curtain. This emotional imbalance eventually fractured their relationship. Benny's failure wasn't betrayal. it was detachment. He could compose a haunting melody, but couldn't have a hard conversation. Years later, he admitted, "I gave my best lines to songs, not to the people who needed to hear them from me." That single line reframes everything. Benny wasn't cruel, he was scared. Facing real emotions felt too risky, so he built musical walls. The result was songs that moved the world, but failed the people closest to him. His greatest gift, his ability to feel deeply through music, was also his greatest flaw. He could make millions cry, but struggled to cry with the people he loved. Now, at 78, Benny has begun to unpack that truth. He sees how even musical silence can wound. He's not rewriting history. He's revealing what's always been there, just beneath the melody. And for the first time, we're hearing the full story. It doesn't come with a chorus. The world loved to stir up rumors about ABBA's female rivalries, but the real silent tension wasn't between Agnetha and Frida. It was Benny, quietly competing not with a person, but with fame itself. In every photo shoot and headline, the spotlight leaned toward the women, their beauty, their drama. Benny and Bjorn were labeled the men behind the music. No matter how many hits they wrote, they weren't the face of the brand. For Benny, this wasn't about ego. It was about being seen for who he truly was. He was the architect of their sound, layering harmonies and shaping emotion. But when awards rolled in, his name was barely a footnote. He wasn't angry at the women. He was hurt by how the world overlooked his work. He wasn't a machine, as critics often implied. Cold, technical, distant. In truth, he was the soul. He poured his heartbreak, discipline, and perfectionism into songs that made people cry. And yet the tears were credited to the singers. Over time, that quiet resentment grew, not against his bandmates, but against the narrative. Now, Benny has started opening up about legacy. He doesn't want credit for fame. He wants people to understand the cost. While the women faced pressure in the spotlight, Benny was quietly being erased from his own music. His face didn't sell posters, but without him, there was no sound. This isn't about vanity, it's about truth. And Benny's truth, finally spoken at 78, is that behind every hit song was a man giving everything he had to music, because real life felt too hard to hold. He helped create a global phenomenon, yet he often felt invisible within it. Benny Andersson wasn't chasing popularity. He was trying to prove that music wasn't just entertainment. For him, it was voice, therapy, and language. Being treated as just the technician behind a pop group felt like being misunderstood at the deepest level. The real rivalry wasn't Benny versus the women. It was Benny versus perception. He was locked in a silent battle against a world that didn't see how much of himself he put into the songs. The fame gap between him and the singers wasn't about talent. It was about image, and that gap left him feeling forgotten even while standing on the biggest stages in the world. As time passed, Benny stopped trying to change the narrative. He poured himself into his work, film scores, musicals, and other creative ventures, where he had full control. But even in those quiet years, the frustration lingered. He knew exactly what he had contributed. He knew how little of it was truly acknowledged. Benny later admitted that he used to read reviews, hoping someone, anyone, would notice the structure of his songs, the emotions in his arrangements, the risks he took musically. Most didn't. He was either ignored or misunderstood. Even now, people remember the faces, not the man who built the foundation. That silence became its own legacy. Benny never wanted fame in the traditional sense, but he did want famous. He wanted the world to see that he was more than a keyboard player in the background. He was the one sculpting the sound that carried every emotion. And when the world dismissed it as pop fluff, it cut deeper than anyone realized. This chapter reframes what fans thought they knew about ABBA's internal dynamics. The real divide wasn't personal, it was structural. Fame has rules. Benny didn't fit the mold. He was too quiet, too private, too focused on the craft. But without him, there would have been no magic to mark it. And that's the truth. History almost forgot. The end of ABBA wasn't a dramatic fight. It was a moment the music stopped feeling real, and everything changed. Their success in the late 70s seemed unstoppable, Global hits, sold-out tours, glittering fame. But behind the glamour, cracks were forming. Not a public meltdown, not a sudden fight, just a slow, painful unraveling, like a house silently rotting from within. The pressure of constant touring, creative exhaustion, and emotional strain took its toll. Benny and the rest found themselves in a relentless cycle. Fans cheered, the hits kept coming, but the spark was fading. Benny recalls the moment he knew it had to stop, not because of anger, but because the music no longer felt honest. The joy that once drove him was gone. He stayed out of duty, not love. The end came quietly. No dramatic goodbye, no group decision, just silence. The band members drifted apart. Headlines hinted at it, but the truth was far simpler and sadder. It just ended. Frida had already begun emotionally detaching. For her, the end had come earlier. But Benny, he carried the weight for years. He admits it took a decade to truly realize he hadn't moved on. The silence haunted him. What fans never saw was the emotional paralysis that followed. While the world searched for scandal, the real story was the quiet collapse of something once magical. Benny didn't leave ABBA. He was left behind by a version of himself that had stopped believing. He stayed longer than he wanted to because he didn't know how to walk away. His confession, that he remained out of guilt, adds a deeper layer to ABBA's final days. It wasn't a breakup driven by headlines. It was a slow, heavy fade caused by exhaustion and lost purpose. Even after the music stopped, the expectations didn't. The world wanted more ABBA, but Benny had nothing left to give. He now sees that period as one of emotional and creative death, not drama. After the curtain closed, Benny vanished from the spotlight, not to hide, but to heal. He turned to new creative projects, film, theater, orchestral work, music without the fame, the pressure, or the personal heartbreak. This new chapter was more than a career shift, it was recovery. Musicals like Chess and Christina Fran Duvamala became emotional sanctuaries. Theater allowed him to be honest in a way pop never had. Benny later revealed that during the 90s, he kept a journal filled with unsent letters, raw words for Agnetha, Frida, and Bjorn. In them, he wrote what he had never said aloud: the guilt, the frustration, the love, the silence. It was therapy in ink. He didn't understand his feelings in the 70s. He does now, and with that understanding came growth. In his later years, Benny became a mentor, guiding young composers not just in harmony, but in honesty, teaching them how to feel through their work, not just produce it. He turned from tortured genius to quiet elder, shaping a new generation not through fame, but through truth. His story became proof that reinvention is possible, even after unimaginable success. ABBA didn't fall because of fame. It fell because its members were too human to survive it. In one rare moment of reflection, Benny, now 78, gave the ultimate confession: ABBA worked because we were broken. The music made us feel whole. That one sentence reframed everything. Their joy wasn't fake, but it was survival. Their smiles were real, but they masked pain. ABBA wasn't a fairy tale. It was for people using music to keep from falling apart. Benny once thought time would bring closure. What it brought instead was clarity. He sees the legacy now not as a polished story, but a flawed, human one. We weren't perfect, he says. We were trying to survive. That's the truth fans never heard. Not scandal, not betrayal, just fragile people clinging to sound. The joy was real, but so was the fracture. The music saved them, but only for a while. And now, after years of silence, Benny has told the story the way it really happened. Not through melody, but through memory. Not with a chorus, but with confession.